What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Make It Custom. I'm Carl Fisher, and this is a wicked episode because we have not done this in quite a while, and I love bead rolling, and I love working on the Model A's because we're back on it, and if you've seen the last video, we started on some panels. So we are finishing the bead rolled panels today, and we are also building this tool. What this is the tool that makes these dimples so that we can get the countersunk little hardware into a door panel. It also has a dual purpose. Another thing that's pretty special about it, it shrinks the metal. So if you want to check that out, it's in the video what I'm talking about there, how it can kind of shrink the flange and help control distortion when you're bead rolling as well. So don't forget to like, click, subscribe, hit notifications. Check us out on Patreon, and let's get into this video. All right, so the next step with these door panels is going to be trimming the outsides and making our brass inserts and riveting those on, as well as making our dimple die tool so that we can get the countersunk hardware around the outside of this thing. So the first thing I'm gonna do is make our brass stepped piece. We are gonna be making this brass piece fit in this sort of tapered triangle area. It's gonna step out with like a bit of a rounded kind of profile, the same as the insert inside the dash that looks kind of Zephyr-esque. So what I'm gonna do right now is just template that out. I'm gonna find the templates, there they are, that we were using. If you haven't already, check out the last video where we did do all these pleats and steps. We talked a lot about different dies and bead rolling, a bunch of different fun things that hopefully will save you a little bit of time. So what I'm gonna do is probably use, should I be using this one or should I be using this one? I should probably use this one and then just add a little bit to the edge. I don't wanna go quite to the outside edge because our flange will run into the step that we've made in the bead roller. So I'm gonna use this as my template. I'll add probably 5/8 of an inch or so to the outside of that. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to do that. We're trying to get it all puffy. So I'm gonna want this on the bottom side because there's no real marker as to where to line this up. At least this one has a corner edge, so I'll be able to see that from the top. So let's get this one on here. Here we go. Just got to make sure you have enough space for your material in there. So we'll just kind of line that up. There. Yeah, somewhere there. So whenever you're aligning those dies, you just want to make sure that you have enough clearance for them, so whatever thickness the material is. So you need a little bit more offset and clearance for thicker material. So I always just kind of let the die hover above the other one and then just align them until they're pretty close. For doing this, you know, it is a small piece to handle already, but I'm probably gonna trim it afterwards, after I finish doing this, just so I have a little bit more to hold on to, and maybe the rest of this panel will help hold the shape a little bit. I'm not sure how many times I'll have to go over it. I might be able to get away with it in one shot, but Something I'll have to keep in mind also is that this edge could interrupt on here. So if I hit it too hard and the panel distorts and wants to lift, like I'm gonna try and keep some pressure down on the panel here to make sure that this edge of the die doesn't mark it. At the same token, I don't want to put too much pressure down and then have a mark on the other edge. So I'm not sure if we should, we might screw up one of these. I'm going to try and do it in one go because this is relatively thin material, but this case might be better suited to do multiple passes. But we will see. We will see how we go. I'm actually going to start it a little bit slower and crank it up as I'm rolling, because I do find sometimes when bead rolling, if you start it all at once, especially on something curved like that, it might kink it. Ooh, let's go a little slower. Yeah, I think this might be a multiple pass type situation. I don't remember when I did it last time, but we're gonna do it there. I have not been counting how many turns, so I will count them on the way out. Remind me in the comments. I'll find them 2 weeks later. I didn't realize this is actually protected both sides. Wow. Not bad. That'll be good. I think that'll turn out okay. Let's get this. Well, I guess you could, because like now that's it, right? That's it. Let's have a look. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah, we didn't scratch it. Ooh, we didn't scratch it. 2 passes. You can kind of see where a little bit of a start-stop is, but oh yeah, that's gonna look nice. That's gonna look nice. Everything's continuities. We're gonna get these trimmed a little bit. I'm just gonna use this little guy. Anytime I'm shearing any kind of sheet metal, I always try and creep up on it a little bit. If you go kind of the full thing all at once, you kind of get ahead of yourself. It's much easier to trim off a small border a second time than it is to try and get it all at once. So anybody that doesn't know, this is a Beverly shear. They're kind of like a timeless old shear. Been around forever, making the exact same shear. You can still buy this same shear today. It's they're pricey, but they're called a throatless shear, and the reason being is that they've got this blade curved in such a way that you can do curves this way or this way with the shear. So some other companies have made similar ones that you can get for a lot cheaper, but Beverly has always been the one that I had heard of, you know, as a kid. There we go. That actually didn't really distort, didn't have too much pop in it or anything. You know, actually these flanges might have turned up a little bit, so maybe we'll tap those down, or we might have to shrink them a little bit, because the same thing happens when you collect. We went over this in the last video, but when you collect material with bead rolling, you're essentially stretching that edge and trying to pull material in, essentially. So the amount of surface area in that outer flange wants to shrink to let some of that shape come up in the center of the panel. So there's 2 ways that you can, well, there's a few different ways that you can combat that. One is shrinking the flange a little bit, or like we talked about with the dimple dyed countersunk tool for our hardware. That's gonna collect some of the material and shrink the flange a little bit. You can go in the kick shrinker, which is what we might do, is just shrink the edge a little bit. You can see that on that other panel that I made too, right behind Elio, how much shrinking was done, and that's to get that edge flat, exactly how I'm talking about. So if we want to do the same thing around the edges, we might have to shrink a little bit. Now we're gonna want to cut our centers out of our pieces here. Okay, we are pretty much ready for the next step. Like I was saying before, this stuff probably needs to be shrunk around the edge a little bit to bring it back down. I can show you that actually. Check that out. This sits nice and flat, right? And then you see these corners, how they've tipped up. They've tipped up because they've got too much material. They need to be shrunk a little bit. So if I shrink that, I could probably bend that down. So I'm just gonna pull these, the rest of this masking off of this. We'll go to the kick shrinker here. So what I'll do is I'll just I'll shrink a few times around these corners, and I'll just kind of bend it down at the same time. So just stick it in there and just hold it down a little bit. Same thing there. Do that right here as well. The sharper the corner, the more it needs also, kind of. Like the more aggressive it'll be. Pretty much got it, but it actually needs a little more. If you don't have a kick shrinker, you can still do this stuff. You can shrink that by hand. If you look back in some of the video archives, we've got some like hand shrinking techniques for flanges that work really well. And one more. See how flat we're sitting now. So we've come down a bit, but we could go maybe a little bit more. Still a little bit tipped up. Remember, if that's tipped up all the way around, and we sandwich that onto this aluminum, this brass is probably a bit tougher than this aluminum, especially with this strong bead roll in it. If those edges are tipped up, our aluminum's gonna wanna do the same thing, right? So if everything stays nice and flat, it should finish off nice and flat too. So I'm just gonna give it a little bit more physical bend. Not even really shrinking too much, just kind of clamping it so I can bend it a little bit. There we go. That's nice and flat now, right? You can see how this is popped up and these are sitting nice and flat. Give this a little twist. There we go. So, what does it look like? I think it looks pretty good. I like it. I like it. It looks very good. Other than the warps that we're going to take care of right now, I think that looks awesome. It's exactly... Is that what you're thinking, Elio?
It was.
Yeah, I think it flows really nice. And if we do something similar for the back of the seat, it'll all kind of tie into a nice, neat little package, you know? Okay, next step, I'm just going to jump right into making that tool that I was talking about. So what we're going to do is make a countersunk bead roll tool. We are going to drill this and rivet these on before we get all the way there, but I'm just feeling it right now. So that's what we're gonna do next. Let's make ourselves a countersunk bead roll tool, something that you guys could probably make at home. I know I'm gonna be drilling using a lathe, but it's only one thing that I'm gonna be doing, and I'm pretty sure that there's other ways that we could do it without a lathe. Like you could drill it on a drill press or in a vise. Like it doesn't have to be as accurate as I'm making it on a lathe. Actually, I'm gonna try and do it without a lathe. I'm gonna try and do it without a lathe. Okay, so I've been thinking about this just a little bit. I'm probably not going to do this without the lathe. I was thinking, well, you know, like it's totally possible, and if you guys want to do it, I have some suggestions. Like you could find small washers and you could weld on them, and you could kind of build up and down the different shapes that you would need to stamp this dimple that we're about to make. It can absolutely be done. You could chuck it in a drill and spin it while you're grinding, and we could spend all that time. I'm not gonna do that right now. I am gonna just find some solid 3/4 inch round bar, and I'm gonna lathe, I'm gonna turn this piece just kind of viciously and a bit rugged, just etch-a-sketching the shapes that we want. And we're gonna make this tool, and we're gonna, you know, use it on the door panel right now. But like I said before, Elio and I did CAD design this tool, and we are gonna have it made. So if you guys don't have a lathe to turn one, or you don't want to take on, you know, making one by hand with grinding and whatever, then you'll be able to pick one up and still be able to use one. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. We're gonna find some 3/4 inch solid bar, and there's a piece. Hopefully we find more than that. And we'll throw it in the little lathe. Yeah, I'll kind of show you where I'm at. Basically, where's the air blower? I'm just using this chunk of scrap 3/4 that I found. I drilled 3/16 hole all the way through it. Now we could use like a 1024 machine screw to bolt it together if we wanted to. I'm basically made one side on this end, and I'm making the other side right now. I'm having a little bit trouble getting inside here to get a deep enough cut, just because of the shape of carbide bits. So I ground one. I just ground the little bit off the end of it so that we can really kind of get in there and hollow out a little bit of that material. But this is essentially what's happening. So that is the countersunk area that the sheet metal will go into. The other side will push into that so that the screw can sit inside a little bit of sheet metal that's pushed up. So you can also see that this would be the level of the sheet metal, right? That's the level of the door panel. So that area being pushed up is also collecting material. And it collecting that material is going to shrink a little bit. And so that's what I was talking about with the warp in the panel is there because there's too much material. So if you shrink a little bit with the dimple all the way around, it'll flatten out the panel, which you'll see in a minute. But for now, I'm going to have to space this one up because this isn't actually the right height. When you got a lathe, all these different, I've got all kinds of different bits for doing different dumb things, and this one needs about an 1/8 inch space up. Okay, I'm gonna give that a try anyway. You can see what I've got on the inside here, what I got on the outside there. I'm just gonna cut this in half, and I might even cut it into a couple even smaller pieces. We can use you know, a piece of drill rod in there, and in the past I've just hammered it, just use a hammer, and it works really well. Or you could use a bolt and just bolt them together. So yeah, I'm gonna chop that in half, and now we've got our tool. Not bad for eyeballing, but we'll see how it actually works with a piece of sheet metal. We might have to fine tune this a little bit, maybe give it some sand, paper action. We don't want any of this to transfer onto the front of our dimple. So we gotta make sure there's enough room in there. We might have to sand this down a little bit. But we'll see how it goes. This is what they call drill rod. I think it's like a little bit higher carbon content, a little bit more brittle. It's more like what you would use for like a machine screw. And so we've made that as what we can use to actually squish this. So we'll give that a shot. Okay, the reason why I did that is because I could not find a 1032 nut. And this way we'll have something to hold on to. Ooh, this is hot. I might weld a nut onto here also, so that we could use this like a bolt. I don't know if it would be handy to like be able to impact it. I wouldn't want to do that. I would want to do that on the nut side. Actually, this is a bad idea. Well, here's the other thing I could do. I could probably weld a nut onto here, a little bit larger one, and actually use this as a nut. I'll cut this off and use this as a nut. That way I'll be able to use, you know, a little bit larger nut. All right, here we go. So basically I made myself a glorified flange nut that just has the 1032 in it because I literally couldn't find a nut in my own shop. But that's what we've got. I ground that smooth. We've got our threaded drill rod in there. There's the top piece. That goes on like that. Oop. And then we've got this piece that threads on. So let's give it a shot. We might have to do a little bit of fine tuning. That's okay. Like we could always put this stuff back in the lathe and do whatever we got to do. You know how sometimes a drill bit makes a triangle instead of actually like a circle? It really grinds my gears. It's just aluminum. We make our own circles. Okay. Make sure there's not any stuff on there. Oh, the other thing I like to do is throw a little washer in there, just in case me tapping this was a little bit off. Okay. Okay, so using an impact's probably not the way to go. Maybe we should have done that by hand, but because that's what I just did. Boom. Like I said, in the past, I've just used a hammer and just made this into a punch. Like I've never actually threaded this before, so that was new for me. And Elliot was worried about it from the start. He said, I don't know if that's gonna be okay. Like that's kind of small, 3/16 is kind of small. So I'm gonna turn this into a punch. That's no big deal, this will be a punch. But regardless, we did get a dimple out of it, nice little bubble. The thing I was worried about was I didn't want any of the marks from the top die to be impacted on the top of this sheet metal, which it looks like they're not. You know, you've got all kinds of mark transfer from the bottom one, but you don't get it on the top. That's what I was worried about. So here's an 832, like a number 8 machine screw. So if you get like a number 8 self-tapper or, you know, machine screw, that's the size head it'll be. Nice and flush. I think that looks sweet. So we'll probably use that size hardware, just 832, or number 8 hardware self-tapper. This is a self-tapper number 10. This is what I have on my hot rod, and they are too big of hardware, and it kind of looks a little bit funny if you really want to get critical on it, but it does look the same as this. It kind of sticks up just a little bit like that. And when it sucks onto the door panel, maybe you can get it down a little bit further than that just by cranking on it, but that doesn't look bad either in my eyes. It sticks a little bit proud up, but definitely the number 8 hardware is the one to go for. It's nice and totally flush. I think it's perfect. So happy with that. Happy with the die. Like I said, we're just gonna make it into a punch thing. The way I did that last time was I just welded this to a flat piece of plate so that it can sit on the ground or on the table, and then you would just have your door panel and you just come over and just push it onto it, and then put this on, give it a whack, and then onto the next. So no big deal, we'll probably just do that. Okay, what's next for us with the door panels we're working on is gonna be laying out all the holes, drilling all the holes. We got a ton of holes to drill. We gotta drill all the way around that brass piece so that we can rivet that on with our 532 brass hammer rivets, solid rivets. We're gonna show you that. And then we also gotta lay out all the holes to be dimpled around the outside and then dimple them. So yeah, we'll just go to a montage of layout time-lapsing and get that done. I still got to mark out these holes for the brass pieces.
Do we have the outline?
Ooh, it's gonna look so nice. Okay, Elio had a good idea, okay? Elio had a good idea. Elio said that, you know what? Somebody else that has a 1930 Model A Roadster might want these templates. And, yeah, maybe. So we're gonna put them on the website. If you wanna make these door panels, if you like the template, maybe you wanna change up the door panel a little bit. Your insert could be different, your pattern here could be different, but all the hard work of making the bead roll templates are done. All right, so we are doing this all the way around, just hammer style. This is how I made my last one, and I like the hammer style. You know, the impact would have been sweet, or if we did it by hand, I think it would have been slower. Like, this is way faster doing it this way, I think. You can kind of feel when it's done, you know? I think that's done. Maybe one more. Yeah, there we go. Okay, there we go. The panel still has a little bit in it, but it's a lot better, I would say. We could probably play with it a little bit. A lot flatter, and that's just because it kind of collected a little bit of material around the corners. If, say, there was a little bit less of a flange, this probably could have collected a little bit more, and we might have even got it even better. But we'll probably monkey around with it a little bit, just trying to get it nice and flat. But with all those screw holes in, I'm sure it's gonna be beautiful on the door. So I think the next thing we're gonna do is get these guys in here. This one I still have to shrink the edges a little bit. We're gonna start off by drilling a couple of holes and just holding it in with clecos. If you guys don't know what clecos are, it's something I use a lot. These are like aircraft industry type tools, and what a cleco does, you use cleco pliers. This is like a spring-loaded fastener, basically. What you can see is that, hopefully you can see, GoPros are not good at actually being able to see that, but basically these two pieces are barbed on each end, and when you compress it, they kind of come together and can fit through a hole, and then when you let them go, there's a center piece inside the fastener that spreads those two pieces apart, and it kind of grabs the back side of a hole like a drywall anchor, you know? So you can actually just push this through a hole and it'll hold itself. So it'll pinch two panels together. So you can drill these holes that we're gonna rivet with these solid rivets, these brass rivets. We can drill all these holes and hold them together with these clecos, and then pull a cleco out, put in our solid rivet. You know, it's almost like tack welding, but for sheet metal aircraft type stuff. So that's what we're gonna do next. I'll just shrink these edges a little bit, flatten this one out. So, when doing this type of hammer rivet, you don't want to just go too crazy all at once like I was saying, but you want to make sure that you have pressure up on the backside. You can't just be hovering there. Like, you want to oppose the pressure that you're pushing down with this, but you don't want to push up harder than you're holding down, because you might lift the rivet head up, and you don't want to do that. So, it's something you'll get the feel for, we'll put it that way. It's not really that difficult once you kind of get the hang of it. This is the bucking bar. You can use anything, chunk of steel, whatever, but this kind of gives you enough room for your knuckles if you're gonna hold it up under there. Our rivets are kind of too long for this size too, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it worked, but man, those rivets are long. We ordered rivets too long. Like, we're literally gonna have to grind those off. They're like, gosh, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch solid on the backside. Eesh. They're a little bit large, but they look cool, so we'll grind them if we have to. Man, these first couple are gonna be tough. I'm trying to pinch the 2 layers of sheet metal together with my hand and hold on to the bucking bar at the same time. Because everything's just, you know, you're just trying to get it lined up. That's why those clecos really help. You know, but I didn't want to go with 1/8 rivets for this because I just like the size of going like a little bit larger. My bad, I didn't realize I didn't have that size cleco. All right, I like it. Still got to round these corners and get it fitted up, but that's a beautiful panel. I suppose this will have to have a little bit of a bend in it. Just a little bit. It's actually not bad with the, even with the rivets in there. Man, that looks good. I think that looks sweet. We still got to cut this out, trim this out a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. All right, maybe go have a look from that side. I'll close the door. Oh, no, we can't close it. Can't close it all the way, but you can see what it looks like. I dig it. I very much dig it. All right. All right, everybody. Well, there you have it. We have the door panels done for the Model A Roadster. Really stoked with the way they came out. I love the brass insert. I love the size rivets that we went and used on this. This is 532 rivets in brass. I got them from JC Rivets, I believe. JAYCEE Rivets. That's not like a paid sponsor thing. That's just where there's a massive selection of all kinds of different alloy rivets that you can get. Yeah, I don't think that I would really do anything differently how we made these panels. I really do like the way they came out. I like the pleats on them. That's something that I haven't really done before. We usually do diamonds or scales or that kind of thing. I think the pleats suit the car as kind of like a simple style. You know, we're gonna go kind of gentleman's roadster is what we've been saying. So I think that the seat itself inside the car will probably be like leather pleated or tuck and roll or something like that. So it'll match these panels pretty well. So yeah, I just want to say thank you to everybody watching, and I hope you're enjoying this content because there's more of it to come. We are going to be making bomber seat next. We're gonna do like a bomber bench for this car. We still have quite a bit of work to do on the Model A actually, and some exciting news. Should I spoil it? We got a different drivetrain for the Model A, which means goodbye small block Chevy, hello Buick Nailhead. It's funny, came across a really great deal on a Buick Nailhead, and I was gonna just kind of keep it in stock for somebody who needed it. I offered it to my brother, I offered it to a couple of different people. It was a really good deal, and so we passed that deal on to our customer here, and that Model A is now gonna get the Nailhead. So Elio and I will be ripping out this small block Chevy, and we will be modifying the exhaust that was just made, the steering that was just done, the motor mounts. We're gonna shove a 401 board to 425 Buick Nailhead out of a Riviera that also has a ST400 transmission. So pretty excited for that. Thanks everybody for watching Make It Custom. We'll catch you on the next one. Don't forget to like, click, subscribe, hit notifications, and check us out on Patreon. Link is in the description. We'll see you later.